welcome to another episode of Tiny Nest. I'm Kiva.
And I'm Jake. This series is following our tiny house project from the early stages through to completion and beyond.
In this episode, we show how we redid the propane line to the water heater.
When we installed the propane lines, I put in this little 90-degree fitting so that the line could come in at this angle and be a bit tighter in to the unit. Since the unit's fitting faces directly backwards, otherwise I would have to do this big sweep to get it to line up properly. And I kind of knew at the time that it's not really best practice to have multiple fittings here, and was later told in person by an actual RV tech that in fact it wouldn't pass an inspection for the standards for like mobile home, like RV type standards. So in the interest of being as compliant as possible, and in doing so reducing the number of fittings that are inside the house, I'm going to undo this, remove the extra fittings here, and see if I can't gingerly bend it around, get it to line up straight, and still keep it fairly tight. And the beauty of this is that it should be really simple. I shouldn't have to use the flaring tool again because I've already got it flared with a nut here, and it's just going to be a matter of undoing these, getting the nut lined up with the fitting, and then just tightening it down, and of course testing it with the soapy water technique to make sure that there's no leaks. So the very first thing I'm going to do is actually just make sure there's no propane in the lines when I undo the fittings. The tank's valves are open right now. We've actually had propane in the lines for a couple weeks, I think now, with no leaks or mishaps or anything, which is good. We've been running the furnace regularly. So I'm going to go shut that off, and then I'm going to run the furnace to burn off whatever is left in the line there, and then carry on with this. Okay, the valves on the propane tanks are closed, and I'm going to just run the furnace, and I'm not sure if anything's going to burn or if it just won't have enough. Let's see what happens here. Here we go. That looks good. I saw the flame pop up for a couple seconds and then die off, so means it burned off whatever propane was there. I'm sure there's like trace amounts in the lines, but it got rid of whatever is still pressurized in the line. So that should be good enough to work on, I think. You can hear it trying to light it, and there's not enough to even light the furnace. So I'm gonna go ahead and shut this off. All right, I think I'm gonna start with the nut that actually holds the line onto these fittings. Undo that, then I can just take this whole thing out, and then I'll work on bending the line. Seeing if I smell any propane. Not really smell anything, which is a good sign. Let's see if I can get this thing bent over. Okay, so that was quite a bit of tweaking, and I'm just being very careful to not kink it. Like right here is just, you can just see it starting to deform, so if I cranked on it, this might kink here. So I've just been, just really carefully tweaking it from every spot I possibly can. But what I'm trying to do here is get it so that the flare here on the end is naturally sitting directly in line with the little fitting here, so that I'm not like trying to hold it in place and crank it down, and then the natural flex of it wants to pull it out of alignment on this and then get a crappy connection. So I think it's sitting pretty much bang on. Just like to tweak it so that it's almost like it's coming back around and straight on there. So that looks good. So I'm going to tighten this down and see if I can't get it nice and sealed here. Okay, so that is looking pretty good. It's tight enough. I think I can turn the gas on and check with the soapy water. It definitely is sticking out more. It is kind of what I was trying to avoid with it kind of coming way out. You can see the original sort of set of fittings I had would have been like that. So it was just to there, and now it's got probably, say, 2 to 3 inches out more. But I mean, it's not really that much further out than these water fittings. And, you know, we've reduced the number of connections and it's more compliant and so on and so forth. So I'm going to go ahead and test it. Okay, I open the valve on the propane tank, and you probably won't be able to see this just because of the angle, but I am going to spray this soapy water onto the fitting and then watch carefully for bubbles. Okay, I've been looking at it for about a minute. It looks fine. I actually have seen what a leak looks like, so I know what to look for. Looks fine to me, so I'm gonna actually fire up the furnace, make sure the propane is in fact flowing, and keep looking at that fitting, and hopefully it'll be all good. All right, well, I'd call that a success. It does admittedly look a little bit cleaner, with sort of everything looking the same there. Of course, this is just a temporary thing for the power, but without those extra fittings there, it kind of just looks right, actually. And it is. It's more correct than it was before. So that's good, and I'm going to test the unit. I won't show that because we've shown that in a previous video. If there's any issues, I will show it, but I'm gonna go ahead and assume that it's gonna be good. I've also got a little pro tip I want to share with you guys that I got from actually the same guy who confirmed that it would be against code to have the multiple fittings on the water heater. And it's about propane tank valves. So normally when you're shutting off the gas, you're turning the knob to tighten it, and it doesn't like bite really hard. There's kind of a soft friction that you feel, and that's the gasket like closing off the opening into the actual tank. And there's just sort of a natural feel for how much you snug it down. Like you don't crank the hell out of it, but you get it nice and snug and it's closed. But when you're opening the valve, you twist the knob and it kind of, you undo that initial friction, and then it spins quite freely. But you can't just spin and have the knob like come right out. There's a point where it will stop, like there's a maximum amount of openness that you can reach. And my instinct, and I feel like the sort of normal instinct when dealing with that kind of knob, is when you feel yourself reaching the maximum amount of openness, you kind of stop because you don't want to overly undo it and kind of bust the mechanism or whatever. But what this guy was saying, and this is just sort of the way I understood it, is that there's actually the same way that there is a gasket that closes the tank on the bottom end, there's also a gasket on the top end of this mechanism, the valve mechanism, that will seal off the actual valve and the knob and the threads that you're spinning, so that no gas can leak through there. So it's actually best practice to give it a bit of friction on that top end. So obviously not as much as when you're closing it, but give it a bit of friction. It'll be that same kind of soft feel when you reach maximum openness, and that way you won't ever have a little gas leak at the tank itself. So hopefully that made sense. I know that felt like I was learning something new when he explained that to me, and so I just wanted to pass it on to you guys.
If you want to see some of our previous videos, click on the preview tiles, and subscribe if you want to follow our progress. You can also visit our website here.
Oh! I fucking hope that was a good take, because I moved the camera quite significantly there.